Hi friends, it's me, Em again, and welcome back to my channel where we talk about all things sinister. If you are interested in true crime, or if you like all things horror related, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. That way you can join me for some morbid conversation. So before we get started, I just want to let everybody know that I was successful getting the other side of my nose pierced. What I actually ended up doing, because I live in a small town and I moved from a bigger city, and it's a lot easier to get your nose pierced when you're in a bigger city than when you're in a small town. And I was struggling to get an appointment made, and I have two young kids, so it's not like I can just pack up my two young kids and take them to a piercing parlor. I mean, I guess I could, but I'm not going to do that. My parents are on vacation this week, so they couldn't take them and watch them for me, and I was really just wanting to get it done. So I ordered a piercing kit, and my husband gave his first body piercing. And it's probably still a little bit red because it literally just happened yesterday or the day before. But yeah, so I finally did it, and now here I'm having a midlife crisis, and I have like 15 sterilized needles just waiting to be put somewhere. So I'm going to try to have restraint, and not try to show up here in the next couple weeks with piercings all over my face and everything. So we're going to see how strong my willpower is. But that's just a little personal life update. I did end up getting what I wanted, and right now I have a little rhinestone in there. I'd like to have a little stud, but we're working with what I've got. I don't want to put another hoop on the other side. I feel like that's too much. But I do want a little rounded stud in there, but we'll get there eventually. Right now I'm just happy that there's a hole there. Okay? But now that you're all caught up on my personal life, what we're going to be doing today, this chat is going to be another 5 photos with creepy, disturbing, sinister backstories. Like I've said in my previous videos, I really like doing these. And for this one, I really dug deep. I mean, it seems like every time I do one of these, I see a lot of the same photos that end up getting repeated. And this time I wanted to do one with photos that I don't see as often, or that I personally haven't seen as often come up in my search results when I start digging for these photos. And so hopefully some of these photos are new to you as well. If you've seen these before, it might be a cool little refresher. If you haven't seen them before, make sure you let me know. Let me know if you think it's, as interesting as I do. But with that being said, here are 5 photos that I stumbled across where some of them I have seen before, but the majority of them have been new to me. And we are going to start with this first photo right here. So the first photo that we are going to start with is a Hello Kitty mermaid doll. And it does look very dirty, like it needs a good cleaning, but it's a stuffed animal. But this stuffed animal is stuffed with more than just a polyester filling. Inside this doll is the skull of Fan Man Yi, a young sex worker from Hong Kong who was abducted by 3 men and 1 girl. Chan Man Lok was one of Fan Man Yi's usual clients, and he very much favored the young girl. Oftentimes, when he'd seek services at the brothel she worked at, he would request her specifically. This led to Fan Man Yi taking advantage of him and stealing his wallet one day. When Chan Man Lok discovered the missing wallet and money, he demanded it back. Fan Man Yi returned the money, but was unable to pay him the added interest that he was demanding. This led him to deciding to kidnap her. He would enlist the help of 2 other men, as well as an underage girl that he had been grooming, known only as Ah Fong. They would hold Fan Man Yi for about a month, where they would continuously torture her the entire time. The brutality and the specifics of her torture are absolutely heinous, and what is even more disgusting is that Chan Man Lok would have the 14-year-old child that he was grooming participate in the torture. Eventually, Fan Man Yi would end up dying from the abuse, and when the men discovered her lifeless body, they would dismember her, boil down the majority of her body, and discard everything but her skull, which was kept inside the Hello Kitty doll, and her organs, which were found in the refrigerator. After her death, Ah Fong, the 14-year-old, would end up going to police because of the nightmares and guilt that she had from the whole ordeal. When the men were arrested, they would be convicted of manslaughter. This is because they had limited forensic evidence to do any substantial autopsy on, and therefore it wasn't able to be determined her cause of death. So it couldn't be proven that it was a murder rather than an accident or a drug overdose, although it was eventually determined that she did die because of the abuse she was dealt. A lot of the evidence came from the groomed victim of Chan Man Lok, who was given immunity in exchange for her testimony. The three were sentenced to life with the possibility of parole after 20 years. Upon sentencing, the judge said, "Never in Hong Kong in recent years has a court ever heard of such cruelty, depravity, callousness, brutality, violence, and viciousness." Now, it was because the trio did not intend to kill her that they were given life with the possibility of parole. Had they intended to kill her, like with a bullet to the head or some purposeful manner of death, then that would have been an automatic life without the possibility of parole. However, they didn't intend to kill her. They just wanted to torture her, and she happened to die from her torture. So it was not an intentional death, which gave them the eligibility of parole. But I almost think that's worse. Like, they didn't intend to kill her. They just wanted to keep her alive to torture her. And unfortunately, she died from being tortured. It's pretty messed up. So this next picture is a picture of an older gentleman who is enjoying a Thai vacation. And what is ominous about this picture is that this older gentleman is Joseph Fritzl. Joseph Fritzl is a man who imprisoned his daughter in his basement for 24 years, repeatedly raping her and forcing her into pregnancies. During this particular vacation, Fritzl left his daughter for a month unattended at that time. Fritzl had lured his daughter, Elizabeth, on her 18th birthday down to the basement under the ruse of needing help to hang a door. She held the door for him as he hung it, and immediately after, he held an ether-soaked rag to her face until she passed out. At that point, he put her in the chamber that she had just helped barricade. Rosemary, Elizabeth's mother and Joseph's wife, would end up filing a missing persons report with police, but Fritzl would circumnavigate this by forcing Elizabeth to write a letter under duress saying that she was no longer wanting contact with her family and that she was staying with friends. In this letter, she also threatened to leave the country if they began to look for her. Fritzl took this letter to the police in order to get them to stop the search for her. Elizabeth would end up giving birth to 7 children over the course of her captivity, 1 who had died shortly after birth. 3 of the children, Kirsten, Stefan, and Felix, were allowed to live with Elizabeth in the basement, where she would teach them to read and write. Fritzl threatened them often if they were to try to escape and would often punish them by turning off their power or not bringing them food for days. 3 of the children would be removed from the basement to live with Joseph and his wife, Rosemary. He would explain to Rosemary and to social services that those children he took custody of were left at his doorstep by his runaway daughter for him to take care of. It wasn't until Elizabeth's eldest daughter, Kirsten, fell ill that she was able to convince her father to take her to the hospital, where there she would be treated for kidney failure. The hospital would end up calling the police due to the bizarre story that was given to them by Fritzl. Later on, Elizabeth would convince her father to allow her to go to the hospital to be with her daughter. He agreed, and when the two came to the hospital, the police were again notified due to the earlier suspicions by the staff. They would both be taken into custody, and originally Elizabeth wouldn't speak until she was promised that she would never have to see Joseph again. After DNA tests on the children, as well as a search of the home, Fritzl would end up being arrested, tried, and plead guilty to murder by negligence, enslavement, incest, rape, coercion, and false imprisonment. He would be sentenced to life in prison in March of 2009 with the possibility of parole after 15 years. Elizabeth and her children would have lots of physical and emotional obstacles to overcome, but considering the life that they had lived and everything they had gone through, are actually recovering quite well given the circumstances. The man on the top of this picture is Dave Schultz, who was an Olympic champion freestyle wrestler, and he would eventually be murdered by the man on the bottom of the picture, John DuPont. John DuPont was the heir to the DuPont family fortune, making him a very wealthy man. In fact, in 1987, it was estimated that he was worth around $200 million. He used his wealth to help facilitate his interest when he began to enjoy sports, particularly wrestling. He developed a 440-acre wrestling facility for amateur wrestlers that he called Team Foxcatchers. He would end up also allowing some people to live in houses on the grounds. Two of those people were the Schultz brothers, Mark and Dave, who were both Olympic champion wrestlers. DuPont's friends and family began to grow concerned over his erratic behavior, but nothing came of it until January 26, 1996. On that day, DuPont would shoot and kill Dave Schultz in front of Schultz's wife, Nancy, and DuPont's head of security, Patrick Goondale. DuPont ended up firing 3 shots for seemingly no reason. DuPont's defense would try for an insanity plea and had DuPont hospitalized and examined. One of their expert witnesses would even describe him as a paranoid schizophrenic. However, the insanity plea was thrown out and he would be found guilty of third-degree murder, but mentally ill. DuPont's attorneys would end up filing for appeals, which would even reach the Supreme Court, but would not overcharge the verdict. DuPont's maximum sentence would have ended on January 29, 2026, but he died beforehand on December 9, 2010. This is a seemingly sweet selfie-style photo that Robertblin had shared of him and his pregnant wife, Precious, on Facebook. Giblin had served in the Canadian military for 18 years, beginning in the Navy in 1997, where he would reach the rank of sergeant and would eventually switch to the Air Force. While in the Air Force, he would serve as an intelligence officer, and he would serve 2 tours in Afghanistan. Giblin would end up undergoing treatment for PTSD that he developed from his years in the military service. According to his friends, he showed no outward signs of any mental illness, but as we all know, all too often, people conceal a lot with their mental health. However, those who weren't as close to him, such as his apartment's building manager, had noticed that Giblin was often complaining and screaming about things and seemed to show an unnaturally high temper. Regardless, shortly after this picture was posted, and a few days before Christmas of 2015, Robert would end up stabbing the 9-week pregnant Precious multiple times before throwing her off the balcony of their apartment that was located on the 21st floor. He would then jump off after her, killing them both. Robert was 43 at the time of his death, and Precious was 33, and as far as anyone knows, there was no real motive that inspired this altercation. The final picture tonight is of the Webster sisters, Savannah and Kelsey, and their friend Essa Ricker. The 3 girls had been hanging out one day, taking pictures in the Spanish Fork Canyon. This was the final picture that they took that day, and if you look closely, you might be able to guess as to why it was their last. The girls had been hanging around the train tracks and had seen a Utah railway train go by and had even waved to the train's engineers as it went by. Savannah had even posted a status on Facebook that said, "Standing right by a train, ah ha ha, this is awesome." What the girls weren't aware of was at the time there was another train the Union Pacific train that was coming in the opposite direction. The gap between the two set of tracks where the girls were standing was only about 3 foot in width, and the wind turbulence that was caused by the passing train was enough to knock the girls off balance, resulting in them being hit by the second train. Essa and Kelsey were killed in the accident, while Savannah would end up being taken to the primary children's medical center to undergo surgery. Unfortunately, her brain damage was too great to overcome, and her parents would make the difficult decision to end up taking her off life support. Anyway, so those are 5 photos with a sinister background story to them that I hadn't seen, like I said, the majority of these photos before I started working on this video today. The last one I have seen before of the Webster girls and their friend Essa Ricker, but the other ones I had never seen before. I had dug deep for those photos, and I'm hoping maybe you've seen some of them, but I'm hoping there's at least one that you haven't seen before. I never remember to mention this, but in the description box, I do have all my social medias listed down in the box. On TikTok, I try to share, more morbid facts and more morbid, snippets. I do break down some of the videos and I share them in smaller bites on TikTok, as well as on my Facebook group. If you're a part of the Facebook group, you will get notified whenever a new video is posted uh, on YouTube. Same thing with Twitter. I try to make it so that that I share on Twitter whenever a new video is posted, as well as some, morbid facts, interesting facts, morbid horror related stuff. My Instagram is less horror focused. It's more of a broad page. It includes, a horror stuff and M is for morbid stuff, but it also has a sneak peek into my life as a mom, a little bit more personal if you're interested in books that I'm reading, movies that I'm watching, stuff like that. You're more likely to find that on my Instagram if you want to see the M. Nelson beyond just like the true crime. So all of that is listed in the description box down below. Feel free to take a look. Feel free to follow me on any or all social media or none, I just like to throw that out there if that is your cup of tea, if that's something that you're interested in. If you want to stick to YouTube, that's fine with me too. Just make sure you like and subscribe and turn on your post notification bells. That way, the next time I sit down here for another morbid conversation, you will be the first one notified. All right, friends. So it has been interesting. And as I always say, take care, stay safe, and I will talk to you later. All right. Bye.